is. This is the second meeting I've ever chaired. Chaired a budget task force meeting when Marty couldn't make it. That was my first time. We survived it. Thank you. All right. How about just kick me when I go off?
I'll just kick you.
Yeah, thanks. Oh.
Seven, and then you break.
Yeah, kick me for that. I'll forget that for sure. How many long? 1 hour breaks? Oh, I see. Every hour, yeah. 7 minutes or 10 minutes? We never know. We'll call the meeting to order. It is 6 p.m., July the 4th, Independence Day. Happy Independence Day to our American friends and happy belated Canada Day to our Cochrane residents. I am Deputy Mayor Wilson presiding, and I guess we have a big agenda ahead of us, so let's just get right to it. Adoption of the agenda. Can I ask for a motion to accept the agenda as presented? Mayor Janung.
Yeah, thank you. Deputy Mayor, I'd like to amend the agenda and delete business 5A, B, C, D, E.
We're deleting 5A, B, C, D, and E.
That's right.
Thank you.
And in-camera items 6C and D that were on the public agenda and adding a new 6C and D.
6E and 6. Okay. And we have a late on Councillor Federico.
Yeah, I'll just be objecting to one of those in-council meetings or in-camera meetings because it's going to ask me to recuse myself yet again publicly over an issue that doesn't involve me, but I would just want that to be publicly stated, please. And I'll object when it's time to go in camera. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Federico. Adoption of the previous minutes. Can I ask for a motion to accept the minutes of June 19, 2023? Oh, we didn't vote on the, I'm so sorry, see, I'm already off the rails. Okay. We need to vote on the adoption of the agenda as described. All those in favor? Unanimous. Adoption of previous minutes. I need to ask for a motion to accept the minutes of June 19, 2023. Councillor Reid.
I'll be happy to move those minutes.
All those in favor? All right, proceeding along. Our first topic is Delegations 4A. We have Cochrane Skatepark. Can I call Sam Stewart to the podium, please? Right at the computer there, Sam. Yeah. Welcome to Committee of the Whole. We understand you have a presentation for us?
Yeah. I think load it up. Yeah. Oops. Cool. So yeah, I was here to talk about doing a skate park strategy for the town of Cochrane and just what the future of that would look like. And I've talked to a few people on this over the last little bit, including Jeff and then a couple council people and some people from the town. So first I want to do a quick intro about myself. I moved here when I was 19, 2007. I moved to Cochrane to start a business here. And the thing that brought me here was actually the fact that Cochrane had such an amazing skateboard park. So yeah, I was from Sylvan Lake and I was really into skateboarding. And Cochrane was the first town around that really was forward thinking and built an amazing skateboarding facility in a small town. And now anywhere you go in Canada, pretty much everybody has amazing skateboard facilities. And yeah, the skateboard park got a lot of attention nationally, that it was a small town that was doing this. It was very forward thinking at the time. Obviously it brought me in and it brought my business in. And it's also been featured in tons of huge skateboard publications over the years, which you guys would probably not be familiar with. But and then yeah, it's brought my business here, and we've expanded. We have a YouTube channel that does over 1 million views a month. We partner with huge brands like Vans and Thrasher and Girl. But it's That's a little backstory on me. And then I also wanted to introduce you guys to some of the people that run programming at the park, because it's actually a very busy park, and I would say almost every night of the week there's some sort of programming going on there. So the Inside's a youth group that's there every Thursday. There's a huge crew of people, and their goal is to support and mentor youth in the town. They do large gatherings every Thursday, like I said, and they also do like camps and other events throughout the year there. Cousins Skateboarding is an Indigenous group that does stuff in Manithni and at Cochrane Park, and we're super involved in that. And they regularly do events at Cochrane Skatepark as well. And then another one is Prom Night, which is a girls skateboard club that's super popular. We get 40 to 50 girls out every Tuesday. They're actually going to be there tonight. Girls 7 to 15 years old. It's got national attention as well, like Vans. Everybody knows Vans footwear, but Vans Shoes sponsors it every week. They give out a pair of shoes to the prom queen every week, which is just a random draw, and we sponsor it with like pizza and drinks. So I think like just wanted to like introduce you, I guess, like to a little like some of the stuff that happens in the community weekly there, and then I guess a little bit on like the actual park. It was originally built in 2007, I believe, when we had a population around 15,000 people. I think the original cost, this is an estimate that someone told me, was around $360,000. So it's been there for a long time, and there's been like very, very little maintenance that's had to happen on it. And I've talked to Parks and Rec, and they all say it's probably the busiest public park in town. Like, you can go there any time of day, and there's people there. You go there at 9 a.m., there's moms in lawn chairs with like little kids riding scooters. You go there in the middle of the day, there's 13 and 15-year-old kids there. You go there at night, and there's 30-year-olds, and there's 40-year-old dads. There's all different people there. So I think that's really cool. It's like a public space that's free to use, and it's constantly being used by all different demographics. And I'm somebody that grew up in a small town. I grew up in Sylvan Lake, as I said. I think that's like one of the main demographics that gets really served by the skateboard park, is like that kids that are like 12 to 17 range, which I think in a small town get ignored a lot. You know, when you're below 12, you can go to a playground, you can do a lot of little kids stuff. And when you're over 17, you have a car and you can drive places and you can do a lot of things like that. But as like a 15-year-old boy in a small town, there wasn't a ton of stuff to do. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is the huge growth of skateboarding in the last 15 years since this park was built. Skateboarding since then has like exploded as a sport. It's one of the fastest growing sports with women. It just got introduced into the Olympics, and yeah, it's just like been insane growth as a sport. And then again, I wanted to bring up the fact of like how amazing the Cochrane Park is. Like, since it's been built, it's brought on like contests and demos and camps, and it's been a huge part of the community. And again, like huge companies like Vans holds events there, Quicksilver, Element, DC Shoes. I'm not sure if you guys know these companies, but they're massive billion-dollar corporations from California and places like that that are choosing to hold events in Cochrane, which I think is exciting. And then we do our local contest there. We just did it 2 weeks ago. We gave away $10,000 in cash and prizes, and we donated all of the winnings all of the registrations from it. We donated to the food bank. We gave away $2,000 to the Cochrane Food Bank. It's also a Canadian Olympic Committee sanctioned event, and it brings in tourists from all over Alberta. We had people from BC. And then again, every demographic there, which I think is pretty cool, like the amount of people that it brings in and like the different people that it brings in. And so then like, yeah, I still think Cochrane Skatepark's an amazing facility, and it was way ahead of its time 15 years ago. But I wanted to point out some like problems that we've had with the park. Obviously it's older and it could use maybe a little bit of upkeep now after 16 years. And then the other thing is a capacity problem. Like when we do these events here all the time, there's times where there's just too many people for the size of the park. You'll have over 100 people there on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and it's really not built for that amount of people to be there. And then the other two problems is there's not easy access to it if you're a parent and you're up in Fireside or you're in Heritage and you want your kid to go down there. It's not super convenient to get to. And then the last one, which this is like my biggest problem with it, is it's very intermediate and advanced. So there's not a lot there for younger kids. So it'd be like a comparison would be having a ski hill with only black diamond runs, or yeah, just kind of harder things to ride. And then, so our vision with it, we really would like to start working towards a plan on doing some smaller community style parks, something in some of the little communities, like, yeah, it'd be nice to have one in Sunset or Riversong or some of the spread out harder to find communities that have a lot of young families moving into them. It'd be nice to have some smaller entry level skate parks out there. And again, somewhere that some of the programming could have, some of the programming could happen there as well. And we'd like them to be kids friendly skate parks, easy for beginners, easily accessible in those neighborhoods. I would also ease some of the volume that we're currently seeing at the downtown one. And I know there's like occasionally problems with the downtown one, or people will complain about things that go on there. But it's like a spot where when you get 60 people in a zone, and it's just like Lord of the Flies, there's nobody that, like, there's no, there's nobody to patrol it. It's like literally kids patrolling it themselves. And I've lived here for 16 years. I think I've seen 2 fights there. And I know like when stuff happens, it ends up on Cochrane Mom's Facebook pages and things like that. But I think it really is pretty well regulated by kids overall. But again, I think the biggest problem with all that is a volume thing. If you get 60 kids together, even if you have 60 adults together, yeah, you're gonna have difference of opinions. And so this is a photo from Mattamy Homes website. They're a home builder in Calgary, and they've just put in like an amazing skateboard facility in the new area that they were building in Yorkville. And when I'd spoken to Jeff about this before, he seemed to think that that might be like maybe some of the community or some of the builders in some of the communities might be interested in putting small parks in instead of like a playground or something. Yeah, and then that was basically it.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Stewart. It looks like it's generated some questions from around the table. Not really seeing the order they came in. We'll start with Councillor Reid, I believe was the first light I saw. Come on. Oh, I see. Councillor Federico, I'm sorry. Councillor Federico, please start us off.
Thank you. As one of the councillors that I think that have been supportive of kind of where you're going and what you're looking at, I did hear that there at one point was a petition going on to kind of expand our skate parks or whatever that looks like. Could you elaborate on if that ever went anywhere?
Yeah, we had something like that, and well, originally we had spoken with somebody at the town. This was like probably 10 years ago, and it was always talk of expanding the current one, and that was always kind of the dream there, was to add a kids section onto it. And then COVID happened, and watching just the amount of kids that were there during COVID, and not just skateboard kids, but just kids that were there hanging out and stuff, it's pretty eye-opening to most people that you don't want more people jammed into that zone. So we kind of gave up, and then I think we're kind of like re-strategizing on what to do. But I know like the amount of people that talk about doing a petition, like I know we could get thousands of signatures pretty much instantly. And if you think that that would help in proving the need, we definitely could do that, but we don't have anything currently.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's probably needed. I mean, as a parent of 3 kids who are going to be 12 and up, I understand the need of what you guys are kind of looking at. I understand that, you know, the skate park for the most part might entail most older kids capacity. There's going to be an access issue. I guess, have you actually gone to any of the developers? Like, so I'm talking about like if you've gone into Sunset or Heartland or kind of inquired whether or not there could be land or land dedicated to help you.
I haven't spoken to any of the developers yet. I'd spoken to Jeff, and then I had spoken to Angie at the city and some people, and I feel like, again, like there's playgrounds in every community, and if you go by any playground, there's usually maybe a kid on there kind of thing, and I think you wouldn't need a huge space to do a nice beginner park. Like you can do one half the size of a tennis court if you want. So it's actually a really easy thing to find space for, I think, overall, especially if we want to do these like beginner style ones.
Yeah, my suggestion is maybe other than reaching out to who you already have, maybe reaching out to Mr. Hyman. I think he would be a good asset for you to be able to reach out to. And he's got all the contacts when it comes to developments within our area, and perhaps he could line you up with some different community developers to pursue this, and whether or not they'd be on board to perhaps granting this. I think anybody with young kids who lives in Cochrane realizes how important this would be to expanding our recreation needs for youth. And we certainly don't want to add into the jumble mumble mess that's, you know, it's busy, it's already great where it is, but we don't need to add more youth into that particular space. I think we need to increase our spaces around town. So thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the feedback and information.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel.
Thanks very much for your presentation. I gotta say, first off, I love the shirt. Do you sell those at your store?
We do, yeah.
I think I'll be coming to get one. My question, I think you've already answered it, but I just want to make sure I have it crystal clear. I've always thought it would be super cool to have an even bigger skate park with something that like really has a regional draw, something that people talk about, like maybe even all over Western Canada. But am I understanding you correctly that the skateboarding community would much prefer having additional smaller parks as opposed to investing in one really big like mega park?
Yeah, I personally would love a mega park, you know, I think it would be sweet, but I think just seeing the problems that just having so many people in that thing, like if we could build a mega park and have everybody be there and get along, but I just think it makes more sense to do smaller ones, even though like, yeah, the smaller ones would be definitely, they'd be more used by younger kids and things like that, but yeah, I think definitely, yeah, the bigger the park, the more crazy stuff that goes on there. And you obviously see like Millennium Park downtown Calgary. I think sometimes that gives a bad rep to skate parks, but it's like a 24-hour lit skate park downtown Calgary, so it brings in a lot of like homeless and like different things there. But I think having lots of smaller facilities, like Calgary's had a really good skate park strategy. They wanted to do 50 skate parks in 10 years. They've failed at a lot of them, but they're putting in like 3 or 4 skate parks a year right now. And a lot of the community parks have been huge successes.
And then one more question. So if we were to find some ability to invest in the current park, is there a particular feature or a couple of features that you think would be most appropriate to help younger and inexperienced skateboarders get started? Something really simple you could suggest?
There's like 2 obstacles that it's like really missing, and I don't think it would cost that much to add those on there, kind of thing. And there's actually funds like that we have sitting waiting to do a few things like that. We just haven't got organized enough to put stuff in, but I know Angie and Zach from the inside were talking about it, adding a couple features in there, and that would be super easy to do, kind of thing.
The third question, even though I said that was my last one, can you tell me more about these funds that you guys have?
I think it's like $7,000 or something that Zach has, that he wrote a grant for it. He's from the inside, like one of the first community places that they do the Thursday night thing there, and it was supposed to be used for like upkeep. He had it specifically for upkeep on the skateboard park. So I know he's working on that right now. He couldn't be here tonight, and then yeah, everybody else that I had asked had programming things tonight, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
It was brought to my attention that the chair may have missed a comment from Mr. Hyman. I don't know if he had something to add to the conversation.
I just wanted to share with Mr. Stewart that I made some notes. I was going to, I'll bring this up in his presentation with the developer liaison group. So there's the awareness with all the developers. There is also a pump track that is proposed in Fireside. So that will be opening in the Central Park later this year. Yeah. Again, I'm not that familiar with all the skateboard features and things like that and whether it's appropriate, but certainly something you should look into as well.
For sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Mayor Janung.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sam, love your energy. I appreciated meeting with you and Zach. It feels like it was a long time ago now, and I feel like this file is not moving as fast as you'd like, but I appreciate that you're here advocating on behalf of your community and bringing that energy and optimism and passion, which I think we can all feel in you for your sport. And I just love that story that you grew up and looked and emulated Cochrane as a place to move, and you actually moved here and started a business here. So kudos to you for all of that. But then you continue to challenge and want to build a better community here, and I thank you for that. That's awesome, and we need more people like you. So keep it up. I agree with most of what's been said so far. I believe that Mr. Hyman would be a good connection point for you to get on the developer kind of radar, so that maybe this is something that's implemented in a new community and that we actually don't have to invest in externally for this, but maybe it's implemented as part of another neighborhood, and that's what I shared with you during that meeting. And Councillor Fadeco's made that clear already, and Mr. Hyman's spoken about the developer liaison, but also Ms. Lowe in the Parks Department for what's slated, what's coming, what's, you know, that's the part of her portfolio as well. So 2 connections there. The skate park too, just a little history lesson like that. I was on council then when that opened. I think it was one of the last things I went to under a municipal function for myself as a councillor in the summer of 2007 prior to the fall election. And it blew me away at that time how many people were at the opening. The music, the amount of energy, the kids, the parents, the whole community seemed to show up in droves that day. And I think, again, what I've been touched by your story on is how many people that your activity reaches. And you've outlined that very well in your presentation tonight. But when I met with you and Zach, it was, you know, you were telling me about the girls and the older kids and then the dads and how many people actually are in programming facilitated through you and Zach. So again, I think that's awesome. The other thing that I think Councillor Nagel touched on was the spreading it out around different neighborhoods. I agree with that idea. I think the mega park would be pretty cool to have in Cochrane, but I also see, I mean, we're already trying to spread things out into different neighborhoods so that parents don't have to drive all the time to the same place, and maybe we actually alleviate some of our own traffic issues by spreading the skateboard or the skate park love out into other neighborhoods. So I think it's great that you're here and putting it on our agenda tonight. I think that's a great step. One of the things that I would ask maybe of you or encourage you to do would be to invite council administration to a couple of those events. Sure. I drove by, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and kind of did one of those looks across at the park and wondered what was kind of going on. Yeah. Not that you need to convince us further, but I think when we see it and kind of live it with you and see what you're up to there, I think we could better help find a way to get it done in the future. So a quick email to somebody in the office and administration here to invite a few of us to an event would be, I think, really awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think that was it from me. I didn't really have much of a question in there, but I do have one for administration. I thought I read somewhere, Mr. Heineman, that there was a new neighborhood that was implementing, and this was something Sam brought up to me in a meeting we had, was in the interim before we get another park built somewhere, is there the opportunity to put some of these obstacles maybe in path systems along here and there? And did I read in an email that a current development was incorporating that in one of their developments? I believe it was, I don't want to say, I think it was Sunset. I said it.
Well, through the chair to Mayor Janung, Sunset has the workout equipment that's through the linear space. I'm not familiar of any skateboard specific infrastructure that's proposed.
Okay, maybe we'll leave it there because it's speculation and it could have been one of the million emails. But Sam, maybe a question for you. You did talk to me about that. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit about an interim?
Yeah, sometimes some places in Calgary will do like Tuscany has the Tuscany Club, and they just have a flat concrete pad, and then they were able to just like put temporary ramps on there. Those temp ramps are nice, and they're really good at serving small communities. They just don't last forever. I'd say they probably have a 5 to 10 year lifespan. But if there was like a new community that had like a flat concrete pad or something in it, you could definitely do like a test launch by putting something like that up there. But
I think you were also talking about on the paved path systems, if there was like a jump here or a little
some places trick. Like Medicine Hat and some places like that, they call them skateboard spots. So they're kind of like legal spots where you're allowed to just go skateboard or hang out. and they're super low cost, but you put like one small obstacle somewhere like that, they're pretty popular in a lot of cities.
Yeah, I just wanted to enter that, or have that entered into the conversation.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I recognize the deputy mayor will thank you on behalf of all of us, but I wanted to say thank you. But I had 3 comments, well, 2 comments and a question, I guess. One was recognizing that you mentioned several times the number of corporate sponsors that are associated with the park. Do any of them actually make large donations to facilities?
They do. I think this year is going to be a really tough year for any corporate donations from like our companies. Like we work with Vans, they sponsor our like summer camps that we do. They write us a huge check for it, and then like our contest, they wrote us a huge check for. But like big for us, not big for like a skateboard facility. But yeah, there are definitely corporations that will write checks for that. I don't know that they would fund a huge skateboard park project, but it seems to me that most places just get government grants. There's a lot of government grants out that will match like 50% these kind of things. Yeah, I don't think any of those, off the top of my head, I don't think any of those grants would pay for a park.
Okay, yeah, the reason you asked this, actually got my second question was what government grants are. I mean, this is not my wheelhouse, but I have a son-in-law who lives in a northern BC community that is doing exactly what you're doing, although he doesn't own a business in that sense. And they have corporate sponsors, local community sponsors supporting that park, and they've done a really good job of it. The other questions I had were, you talked about are you a committee of one, or is there a group of, like, do you have a formal organized structure?
We used to have the Cochrane Skateboard Association, which was back when the skate park was built. I was kind of dismantled, but now there's like, I'd say like a group of 5 or 6 of us that organize a lot of, and it's mostly people that run these kind of things. We get together and yeah, we talk to Angie about doing upkeep at the park and doing some things like that. We're definitely not, there's not like a formal organization yet. Again, because we weren't really sure if it was needed or if it would just be something that we'd be creating something that wasn't needed. And that was like one of the questions that I guess I had was like steps moving forwards. What would be a good game plan for us?
Yeah, I'm just raising the point that having an organization, looking to seek nonprofit status would enable you to be able to attract funds that you might not otherwise be able to do as just a group of interested parents. So yeah, and the last thing is just a comment. I love the idea of being able to spread our recreational facilities out throughout the community as opposed to having mega facilities. And I think that there are, not only in skateboarding, but in other areas, that we need to be mindful of that as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to keep on the theme of, thanking you for all the work that you do and for your presentation. I do know that skateboarding is growing, and I understand you do run programs. Both my 12-year-old and my 17-year-old, want to know how to skateboard, and I need to figure out how to do that. So I visit your website to find more information on programming.
Yeah, we do skateboard camps that used to be run. They actually were ran through the town originally, and actually Councillor Nagel, your sister, helped me set them up, and she came to me with the idea of doing them, and I told her, I think it was her and a couple other people, and I was like, that's a ridiculous idea. Nobody wants to learn to skateboard from a coach, because I've been skateboarding for 25 years and it was not like that. Like, there was no structure to skateboarding when I started, and then we did a year of skateboard camps and it sold out. We did another one and it sold out, and then we started doubling it and it just became so successful. And then there was a point when the town cut a lot of funding for camps and that kind of stuff. And then Vans, like, again, the shoe company, they stepped up and they said that they would cover all of our insurance and needs for everything. So we've kind of taken it in-house with the inside, like another local organization. So yeah, that's been going for over a decade now. You can, all the info on it is on our website, and it's like incredibly successful. I think it speaks to the growth of the sport that, yeah, when it started, I thought it was a ridiculous idea, and now it's like every city has skateboard camps in it now. And just like, yeah, the evolution of the sport over the years.
That's great. Yeah, and I remember when it was built, and then the following year, 08, 09, anyhow, when the lights were put in, and there's a
Yeah.
huge debate about how long the lights should be on. And that was
Yeah.
the last time I ever worried about the skateboard park.
Yeah.
Because it's just been, like you said, it's been like, very little maintenance, and over the years, very little headaches have ever come from it. It just seems to be, like you said, self-governing, kids having a good time, the community, and a great community that's been built out of it. So congratulations, for being part of that. And I really do appreciate, the idea of like coming to the table with solutions of, here's our challenges, here's some opportunities, and the idea of, your skateboard kind of pop-up parks, wherever they might be, and building them into the rest of our infrastructure. I really like that as an idea. One of the things with the Horse Creek Sports Park idea, in our initial delegation session, we had reached out to, and I don't remember who it was, with the idea is like, should we be looking at adding more skateboard facilities at Horse Creek Park? And the response at that time was like, no, we don't want to be up there. But do you think, has that changed? Should be something that we should consider for up there?
I definitely think that changed, and unfortunately, I didn't hear about that until after that meeting. Somebody came in literally the day of the meeting, and I guess I moved here when I was 19 to start my business, and I felt like Main Street Cochrane when I moved here was like very old lady, like, knitting stores and things like that. And so I was never welcomed into the downtown association, I guess. And I've never been very involved with any of like that part of the community. Like, we're very involved in the community, but I've never been involved in any of the municipal government or red tape things ever. So I never hear about these things, unfortunately.
Well, we'll loop you in. I don't know, maybe get some clarification from staff about because the Horse Creek Sports Park has gone through different iterations, and we're getting closer to finally being able to deliver some park space in the next couple of years. And I don't know if staff could give us an update now if we've started to talk about integrating skate park into that or not. But I think it's early enough in the process that it can be something
amazing.
we can. Cool. So that's about it. So I just need to know, I need to look at your website to kind of understand, and anybody in the community want to learn how to skateboard, reach out to your website.
Or give the shop a call. Anybody there can help you too.
Perfect. I guarantee I will not be one of them. Anyway, thanks so much for your work.
Thank you.
Councillor Flowers.
Thank you. Last but not least, I just wanted to say I do think it's a good idea to revive the nonprofit. We had it going quite a few years ago, and it was a lot of opportunities for donations and grants and different things that you might not be able to access through your business. So it might even be able to be revived because it was on the books. So maybe you could still get it going. At that time, we had movable jumps made out of wood, and they didn't work too good. We had a lot of problems. But it's exciting to know how much it's grown, and I had no idea how many organized programs and events that you were doing. I would love to come and check it out. And how many girls are involved, I had no idea about that either. So congratulations on well done.
Thank you.
No more lights on. That leaves me. I just had two quick questions for you, Mr. Stewart. What is your website? Where do we find you?
Shredshop.com.
And you mentioned you had 1 million views on YouTube. Where do we find you on YouTube?
YouTube Shred Shop as well. Yeah, we do over 1 million views a month usually on there.
Very impressive. Thank you on behalf of all of council, thank you for your presentation and coming to see us today. And I think we all took a lot away from that. So
thank you for your time.
Hope to talk soon.
Yes.
Yes.
Too. I appreciate feedback and some valuable strategy from you guys on how to move forwards.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Delegations 4B, the Great Trail Project. I'd like to call Mr. Alex Baum, Mr. Stephen Sims, and Mr. Julian DeCock to the podium, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Active lifestyle seems to be the theme of the evening, so we'll keep on that train and do the same. As you know, we have a significant opportunity to reshape how people interact and move through our town and the Bow Valley. This is a legacy project for our town, region, and the National Trail the National Trans-Canada Trail. The Greater Trail project will provide substantial benefits, to note just a few. From a social perspective, it creates spaces to interact with others, and we say screen time reduction. Also, health fosters physical and mental well-being. On the environmental side, connected pathways reduce vehicular trips. And then on the economic impact side, we say, simply endless. The green space connections, immediately to 3,300 acres of natural beauty in the Glenbow Ranche Provincial Park, which then connects to the Haskayne Legacy Park, due to open in September this year. A significant amount of work has been completed over the last year. This includes coordination and engagement of all jurisdictional partners in Phase 1, Cochrane to Calgary. I could go on for a while, but we need to keep rolling. Joining me, the presenters, slide 2. Okay.
Doesn't work in PDF format,
There we go. Presenters joining me here are Julian, certainly no stranger to this chamber, co-chair of the project, and also past president of our Rotary Club of Cochrane. And then also with us is Stephen, past president also of the Rotary Club of Cochrane, chair of Bow River's Edge Campground Society now, and Stephen also leads the funding side of the project. Before we call on them, I'll provide you with a little background information. The Trans-Canada Trail, initiated in 1992, some 31 years ago. So we are a little late, but not too late. When we are completed, we will be part of the world's largest national trail network with over 28,000 kilometers, coast to coast to coast, connecting our 3 oceans. The why. We've highlighted 3 of them here tonight. Legacy impact. The definition of legacy is something that is passed on. We continue to take inspiration from the vision that was cast back in 1999. That vision was to have our own riverfront central park that included a trail, family park, camping, and trailhead parking for all. This vision, some 24 years later, remains. It is now enhanced with the inclusion of the Trans-Canada Trail and additional bike, packing, camping opportunities. It will take all of us to achieve this, a legacy gift for now and all of the generations to come. Secondly, experience for everyone. Active lifestyle choices continue to gain momentum, and our timing now is perfect. We will ensure accessibility and inclusion for all. And thirdly, community building. Active lifestyles, as you heard previous to us, help sustain healthy communities. And plus the tourism component of this, it just fosters economical growth for Cochrane and again our jurisdictional partners. I'd like to call on Julian now to talk a bit about the structure that's in place.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of Council, Administration. It's good to be back in the hallowed halls of Council. However, it took me a little while to get into my digs, so I apologize if any buttons burst on the way out. The good news, though, by the way, is it only took me one light to get northbound through the 1A construction. Yeah. I left at 4 o'clock thinking I'd really have a problem. So I have the honor of speaking to 2 slides tonight, and they're both pretty boring, but that goes without saying that an old crusty administrator can speak to boring. So the governance structure, before I speak specifically to it, just a little context for you. When Alex asked me to join his group about 2 years ago now, he did so with the proviso that I take on the challenge of writing a terms of reference for the stage of the plan that was being looked at. And I thought, yeah, okay, that shouldn't be too bad. I've read a lot of terms of reference, but unfortunately never authored terms of reference. So it took several drafts, several go-throughs, until we had the able-bodied assistance of Urban Systems who managed to package it in such a way that we were good to go. This particular slide, this particular illustration of the governance structure is really embedded in that terms of reference, which of course is your roadmap, right? It's what gets you to where you need to get with the goals and the timeframes, the roles and responsibilities, etc. So if you have a good terms of reference and you present it to council, it's likely that the next level of planning is going to get some level of support. In this case, Alex and his group were able to get that support so we could continue the planning. If you look, pardon me, at this, at the structure, I'll just focus first on the steering committee. The steering committee is what we started with, over the course of a number of years, and I think it's grown to about 42 members strong. And that 42 members consists of some pretty talented folks, including, if I don't leave anybody out, but certainly all orders of government, municipal, federal, and provincial. Mayor Junung is on this steering committee, along with CAO Mike and other administrators from the jurisdictions. We have technical talent abounds from Trans-Canada Trails, Alberta Trails Net. And of course our stony neighbors to the west. We have a collective group of pretty smart cookies who have guided this process to this date and have informed much of what's happened. And so it's, for me, in my past life, this was a very exciting piece of the puzzle. The Owners Council, which is next to that, I just want to see if I can get this, oh, I went the wrong way. And I'm going to just briefly talk about this slide. This is the Owners Council, and it's made up of the jurisdictional partners that Alex was speaking to, including Calgary, Cochrane, Alberta, and to the extent that Rocky View is on board and contributing. They haven't made every meeting, but they are there and they have offered their support. And of course the Rotary representatives that are Stephen, myself, and Alex. They've been working away as a committee, going through a number of iterations and relationship building, which is key to any group. As you know, council in this case is similar to council in your case. They are there to represent their jurisdictions, and they have gone through various workshops to build that capacity. And they have one major function ahead of them, and that is to approve a trail plan. And the trail plan, an analogy that you might relate closely to would be what am I thinking of? A master plan. Thank you for the words from my colleague. A master plan. It's unique, so it's not quite what you'd see in a master plan, but it has most of the elements of what a master plan contains. And of course, if you have a strong master plan, then the next steps are that much easier to follow. So I'm going to flip back. No, I'm going to flip forward. There we go. The Owners Council is supported by a couple of subcommittees. The first is the financial or the funding subcommittee, which I'm going to leave to Stephen because he's much better at numbers than I am. And the communications subcommittee, and we have a couple of those, the folks who are represented here today. We have the chairman of that committee, Keith Johnson, also a Rotarian, is here. Samantha Nickerson, Julie Haskell, and Suzanne Guida are all on this communications strategy, around this communications committee. Both committees have built strong strategies that have lifted the whole project to the point where we have a roadmap that is ahead of us, and we know exactly what each group will be doing. The other committee that is in the square at the bottom is for stage one, and is your implementation team. not committee, call it a team. That's your technical team. That's your tactical advisory group. That's your engineers. That's your scientists. They're the ones that bring balance between science and reality for those of us who go into a project thinking this is how it should be, and then you have an engineer say, no, you have to do it this way. That's what that group does. And they've been informing the trail plan now for several months. And that trail plan is nearing completion. In fact, it's only a few months off. And I'm going to close by one analogy, and this is, I thought about this, it really did. Everybody is familiar with the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I'm presuming? Okay. I'd like to introduce you to Willy Wonka of our trail. Alex will be back shortly, and I'm talking about in a few months, and he's going to present the golden ticket. I swear you guys are going to be very impressed with that. You're going to be given an opportunity with this golden ticket to move this plan into that design construction stage. I've never had the opportunity to work in a situation at a level where you have all jurisdictions saying this is a good idea. In fact, I can't remember when I've ever had a situation when I've had Rocky View, Calgary, the province all agree at the same time. You're digging for stuff that you don't have to dig for. They are on side. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that and let Stephen get into the numbers with you.
He didn't miss a beat. Just want to quickly show you where we're at. A snapshot of today. Existing trails, we can just say wow. It's the Haskayne Legacy Park you see on the right-hand side or on the east side, a long time in the making. It is a people's place that includes a trailhead, washrooms, sheltered gathering areas, and much more. As we said earlier, ribbon cutting is to happen this September. If you have a look at Haskayne and where it sits there, and you move along the yellow or the orange line, that means it's completed. And you can actually walk from Haskayne now all the way through. There's a gate that holds you out of the park, but it's just a gate now. It's all paved and it's all completed as you move through. And then as we move through on this trail, I'll take you right to the Cochrane side, almost on the left-hand side where you see Cochrane Riverfront. We say Haskayne Legacy Park on one side, our Central Park on the other side. That would include camping, bike packing area for our guests, family park, and trailhead parking. We believe, like the Haskaynes and the Harvey family, this is best use for these lands. We'll hone in a little bit on the area that's not complete. A lot has been accomplished already. The future trail in Section 2, which you're looking at right now, the Owners' Council is currently working on this section that includes the trail connector and bridge to link Glenbow Ranch Provincial Park to the town of Cochrane, and also an important CP crossing that's required to make that adjoining. That again is in progress as we speak with our jurisdictional partners called the Owners' Council. Stephen, on to the funding.
Thanks, Alex. So you see here the dotted yellow line. That is the area where we're really working on our funding, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. So how did we get to where we are today, and how do we find ourselves here? Really, the answer is pretty simple. Through generous donations from private donors and some very hard work by a group of volunteers over the last probably 2 years, but in earnest over the last year. And they've gone out and they have secured unrestricted funds and some grant money, which is restricted. But the reality is these are the hard donations to get. because it ain't sexy to donate to planning. You know, sorry, Drew. It's just not sexy. It really, you don't get to put your name on planning. It's not like a sexy asset like a bridge or something. But we've been able to do it, and we did it because they saw the vision. They believed in what we're doing. And our funding team, sorry, that's telling me we're at 15 minutes. Our funding team is made up of the following contributors. On the grant side, likely known to many of you, our team is led by Tracy Brooker, who is now the Executive Director at the Roar Foundation. Helping her is Natasha Richardson, whose family was the first to donate $100,000 to the planning of the trail in an unrestricted capacity. Carol Poland from the Canmore Rotary Club, when they get to stage 2. Joanne from Cochrane Tourism, who has recently agreed to lend her expertise around grants and writing grants. And she made it clear she wasn't going to write them for us, but she said she will certainly help. Most recently, 2 additional people who have agreed to lend their expertise for, first, Laureen Jensen, who has 25 years experience working with all levels of government in securing funding commitments and is the current COO of Bespoke Consulting, which is a local social profit consultancy. I love that word, social profit, as opposed to not-for-profit. And Paul Clark, who's a new Rotarian, but who is someone who has spent many hours and time in his life working with government from the oil and gas sector. We also have the pleasure, of course, of having Dan Crawford, who handles our public event and some media relations. We have Bill Hartman, a longtime business person, Rotarian, and longstanding treasurer of the campground, Bow River's Edge. And finally, we have Lisa Casewell, social profit accountant with over 20 years of direct experience in all things accounting. And she is really the person who is chasing all those dollars and tracking them all and reporting them all. A fantastic asset to our team. All these people in their own right are very successful. But when you combine them and put them all in one room and all focused on one cause, we're doing quite well. We've accomplished and raised some close to $600,000, which has covered the planning phase. Again, the non-sexy stuff. And of that, only $125,000 was grant. So all that other money came from private donors who saw the vision. We have commitments of at least $1 million, possibly $2 million from private donors, single families, who are prepared to put money into the fixed assets once we start on those. So we have a big job ahead of us, because now we got to go out and find the big money. Small money was the planning. And so if we call or think of this as a funding relay race, we carried the baton to this point. But very, very quickly, we're going to pass that baton to our jurisdictional partners and the Owners Council, and specifically the town of Cochrane, when we go out and search for the big dollars from the province, from the feds, as well as private money. Now, that doesn't mean Rotary is going to walk away by any means. We will continue to lend our full weight and measure of the Rotary International name to this project. We will be front and center working with you as you go to the province or the feds. We already are having those types of discussions, both at the federal and provincial level, and we will, of course, continue to go out and seek those private donor dollars. So that's where we are. This shows, I'm sure you have these slides so you can see where we are. We're at stage 1. It'll be done very shortly. And as we get to the capital funding, that's where the roles will change a little and will support versus lead. And look forward to the journey. Thanks so much. Questions now?
Well, thank you very much. Great presentation. I don't know if that's generated any questions from the round table here. We got one. Councillor McFadden, please go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I've been fortunate to kind of been able to keep abreast of all the great work this group has been doing, and certainly excited about how transformational this will be to Cochrane, and excited about the work and the potential, and quite aware of the different milestones and headaches your group has gone through. So I want to first thank you for all of that, because now you're going to get to the fun part where you start raising money for things. And so with that, what's the best way if members of the public want to get involved or start contributing? What's the best way to stay up to date on the project or to connect? or to start to be able to make a difference.
I would say this, as soon as we have, the owners have the last three pieces that we talked about there, the trail connection to the park, the bridge, and the CP crossing nailed down, not the money's raised, but nailed down, then our communications team actually are standing ready. They're in the gates, ready to go, and we've been holding them back. So they will be very interactive in public engagement, obviously social engagement, and a full team ready to go.
Okay, and so do you have like a hopeful timeline when you might be able to get all those check marks done? I mean, I know that's like the difficult part, is to be able to work with CP Rail and to be able to work, with the province and all the key stakeholders, because, those are difficult questions to answer. It's like, how do you get permission to build a bridge, and where, and the environmental aspects and all the confusions that when you're like, this is a great dream, let's just draw a line on a map and make it happen, then you get stumbling with the beloved bureaucrats. And so, anyways, what's the potential timeline to kind of maybe start putting it in folks' heads?
Our hope is to, quickly following the Haskayne Legacy Park ribbon cutting, we would love to come with a fairly official media event and public event late summer, early fall, that announces some of these big ticket items that connect us to the piece of the trail. It's only about a kilometer. That piece you saw, that one map where you saw the dotted line, it's only about a kilometer. But there's lots of items to that kilometer. Who the owners are. There is some sensitive areas in there, so we want to honor that. So those discussions are happening at the owner level right now, and our hope is that sooner and later, in the next, I'll say in July, that we have those nailed down, and then we turn the communications committee loose.
Excellent. All right. Thank you again. Share with my colleagues.
Mayor Janung, please.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the presentation tonight. Some familiar faces, and Julian, the familiar voice in here just triggers me back to the old days. And then the golden ticket ending was just choice words. Honestly, I appreciate all the work, and I don't need to become an advocate for the trail. I already am one, and I just believe so wholeheartedly in this project, as you've outlined that so many people do and jurisdictions do. The thing that I'm left with is we have work to do, not just we as in all of us in the room, but on this side of the table in coming months or so on that. Well, first of all, I want to see that ticket, and then there's some weight to it, I think, because as you hold it, there's some work that also comes with that. Provincial advocacy you've talked about, and federal and fundraising and that type of thing. So I think we can help in that regard. Then on this side of the table also, as we envision the trail to be complete someday, and I'm hopeful that that day is sooner rather than later, but it's going to happen, not if, it's a when. We have work to do as in integrating transit into there, integrating pathway connections to the trailhead that you outlined. And my question in this big diatribe I'm on here is, can you speak about the trailhead a little bit? Because I think that's going to become key about having people that are utilizing this trail stopping in Cochrane or accessing the trail through Cochrane.
I didn't prime our mayor for that question, but it's a good question. We've talked about that area, riverfront lands being the gathering area for it all. Is that you've got natural roads that exist there already, and that parking trailhead could come right off the road into an area that also moves into a park area and access to the trail. So it's a natural gathering place. We have the Spray Lake Recreational Center right beside it. It's already a people gathering area, and that area naturally moves into that regard. Safe parking, flat parking, so it's again accessible to all.
Yeah, okay, understood that, but I think it's important, kind of key part of all of this, of having people stop in Cochrane or start in Cochrane. The other thing I wanted to highlight in your presentation was the Haskayne Trail connection. Many people, I think, as we talk about these things, take that for granted that that was always there. That's not the case. It's just happened in this last year, correct? And it's, I think, in part due to the work that, the hard work that you guys, your team is doing to put pressure on the city of Calgary to have that long forgotten piece finally connected, because that's sat vacant for, like before my time.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly looked out of place. I mean, the vision was there, and you know, Mr. Haskayne, his vision was always, and he supported it with funds. And now it's becoming reality with the expansion of Woodland Road that will take everybody right down to that site. So you do have a gathering place there. You have a marginal gathering place in the park, you know, that we know, but it's not accessible to all because it is grady. And then on our end, another gathering place will be important. We heard earlier today about the skateboard park and how fast these, you know, active lifestyle pieces come. And I know, you know, Parks Alberta is also working with, they've always intended for that trail. In fact, they called it the C2C trail way back, you know, more than 10 years ago. And now the reality of this many people being active on the trail now has got everybody excited, but lots of work comes with that.
So the trailhead that you're speaking of at the Haskayne end, would that be something we could go and visit and emulate at this end?
Yeah, you'd have to organize that because the gate's still locked. You can't get in there, but if it can be arranged, yeah, it's a really good model of what accessible parking lots look like. Is you know, whether you're mobilely challenged, it is flat, it is large, and then you can take a wheelchair right to the washrooms. You can take them to the public areas, and you know, grandma or the grandchild can also move around there very easily, and then lots of wide pathways.
Just to add to that, when you say emulate the Haskayne, if you had the opportunity yet to see what has been developed down there, it's a large pavilion. They're going to be hosting perhaps weddings. You know, it's probably much more structurally intense than what the riverfront area would look like. But there's a whole opportunity for, as Alex says, a gathering spot, because we've heard discussions about the trail itself tying into Harmony or tying up the Big Hill Creek. I mean, this would be a hub for some of that.
Okay, excellent. And my last question is more, I think, in the governance area, but there's been some confusion, and I raised this at our last trail meeting about MOUs, and there's 2 MOUs, maybe there's some, and I know this is a deep dive into the minutiae of what's going on there, but maybe you could just highlight, or maybe that's an offline conversation.
We didn't go too far down that path, but the MOU 1, some of you have heard about, has been already executed by Calgary and the province, and I think Cochrane is very close to doing the same. It's simply an endorsement of the planning process to date. It basically says, yes, we're on side, please continue to do what you're doing. The MOU 2 is likely to come very close on the heels of the trail plan, that golden ticket, coming to you, because that's where the MOU 2 will start to delineate responsibilities for the individual jurisdictions. So that's a little bit more complicated and detailed. But the MOU 1 is a straight ahead. Yeah, we're on side.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for your presentation.
Councillor Reid.
Great, thank you. Yeah, there's so many great things about this, and I can't speak for all of my colleagues. I'm pretty sure we're all on side in terms of support of this, not only from the first presentation you did, Alex, but with this one. You know, congratulations to you and your committee and committees in terms of what you've been able to achieve. Couple of things. One is, in a previous life, having served on a different town council, I know from experience just what it's like to be able to deal with a bridge crossing a river. let alone the challenges with CP. And, I wish you luck in terms of being able to fast track both of those, but I know from experience that those are gonna be really difficult hurdles to get over, even though it's only 1 kilometer in terms of that. That's just a comment. And again, this is not to take away from the great work that's being done, but I had 2 questions. One is the potential volume of people to use this trail, like, is 1 million people over a course of time? Like, is that too much of an exaggeration in terms of the kind of volume of people you could see using this trail?
It will be lots, and that's based on the Legacy Trail, Canmore to Banff, the usership there. And you can pick a number, but it will be large. There'll be
The point being
walkers,
that we need to
bikers.
prepare ourselves for not just a small parking lot and a small Karen, but, the reference to the Haskayne end of this. So we need to be thinking in those terms, is guess where my head's at. The other one is, and again, not to see like I'm being negative about it, but the province's proposed plans for reservoir, one of the potential sites would affect this property, would it not?
Yeah, that's an ongoing project that the province is working on. As we know, 3 options, and we're keeping abreast of that. My personal position on that is if the trail is affected by that, there'll be some other big players ahead of us, namely the train tracks themselves.
Right.
So, if train tracks are relocated because of a reservoir that ends up being alongside the trail, then we're feeling pretty safe that will also be relocated.
Okay, great, thank you. The last thing is, I know, speaking personally, that our family donated to this Legacy Trail, and there's a cairn, I think, on the on the south side of the Bow River, west of the Center Street Bridge, where our family name still exists in terms of I don't know if it's a brick or whatever it is, but it's in there. And I know my kids referenced it, my grandchildren referenced it, and it would be really nice to be able to Tara's point, to be able to do something like that again, to be part of that legacy, even as a small donor. I know that will come in time, but I'm sure that's part of your thinking as well.
It is, and that's part of the pent-up demand. We have the communications. They actually have a whole plan ready to go, but we're holding them back.
Right.
Saying not quite yet.
Yeah.
But yes, it's important. The more that you will support what you help create, or in the creation of that, a brick or a bench, it becomes part of that legacy.
Yeah, and I think everybody wants to, whatever their level of support, to be a part of it, right? And I think that's the community that you want to build, not to take anything away from the $1 million and $2 million and $100,000 donations, but I think it'd be really, the legacy is for everybody, right? So, thank you.
Absolutely.
Councillor Nagel.
My question is in terms of next steps. Other than wait for the golden ticket presentation, which I'm already eagerly waiting for, what can council and the town of Cochrane do to help move this forward?
I would say just continue to ensure that Mitch is given the resources he needs to be the town's representative on the owners' council. And that when he speaks, he's speaking on all of your behalf and with council's full support. And that's pretty much the way he conducts himself now. But we're at a point where we're going to have to start integrating our efforts, especially around fundraising and those types of things. So, just make sure the resources are there when that baton is being passed, so we don't drop it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again. And like I think all of my colleagues have said, I think the whole community is very excited to see this. So thank you, gentlemen, and to your whole group for being here and for everything you're doing to move it forward. Thanks.
That leaves me. The only questions I jotted down here were along the same lines as Councillor Reid was asking, which is obviously the trail initially ending in Cochrane, it sounds like. Do we expect dramatic usage when it's first connected to Calgary? I know that's a subjective question, but I was also wondering what length of time are we likely to expect between the Cochrane connection being completed and then on to the eventual Banff-Canmore connection? How much work has been done on that? The next leg of the project, I think, will help us plan what we're doing here.
Yes, lots of activity there. As the momentum continues to build, there's Springbank, Bragg Creek, Harmony. They've already met with us. And actually, Glenbow, the Glenbow Foundation was included in those meetings, they're asking how can we connect into the main artery, the Trans-Canada Trail. So those conversations are active. They are an organized group. Canmore, as we speak, is working on a committee that starts working at that end. There's been conversations. Bighorn County, they're anxious and ready to go, almost like our communications department. Even Bearspaw yesterday want to be engaged in their connectivity to the main artery. So all of these arteries, a lot of them are in place already, and some of them just need to be connected. So yes, the main thoroughfare, the Trans-Canada Trail, it will be a busy trail, but because of the investments that these jurisdictional partners, including the town of Cochrane, have made already in trails, it's dispersed well. So we believe with your continued effort here in Cochrane as one of the trail leaders, it will be manageable. And it's, as long as we can keep the e-bike speed down, we'll be good.
Right. Well, if I'm not mistaken, it seems to me like this project, upon completion, it can hardly be overstated what a dramatic change this is for our community. In conjunction with something the mayor's been talking about a lot, which is the Calgary Airport to Banff, the rail project. I mean, it completely game-changing for our tourism sector, for our entire community, and I can only imagine what this will do, but it's very exciting. We thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation.
It is very exciting. I just wanted to
please, Julian, yes.
clarify a point that we likely would not have arranged to come here tonight unless we were pretty certain about these major pieces falling into place. In other words, discussions with CP, the river crossing, the location, understanding the steps federally, what needed to happen, and that's being worked on right now. So if we weren't comfortable with where we were at, we likely would have delayed it a little bit, but we're very confident, as I said before, this plan is going to come together and fairly shortly. So.
And I just would add one thing. Think of Cochrane as the center of the compass, the true gathering place, that center, because people will go south onto arteries, north, west to Canmore and on to Banff, and over east to Calgary. I mean, we really are in a very prime location to have something that's beyond special.
We generated one more question, it looks like. Councillor Nagel.
Sorry, it's something I've just been mulling over. I thought I may as well say it. It seems like a really missed opportunity that we have the super famous Canadian Terry Fox who ran across the country. Is there no mention of Terry Fox in the Trans-Canada Trail anywhere? Is that something that has not been yet unveiled? It just seems so obvious.
We have, the events subcommittee, and I can tell you he's another one that's just ready to go. And the engagement already that he has, I won't say in particular that it's him, but those kind of conversations are happening. When we have these events, we have to include those folks that are important to this town.
Okay, great, thanks.
And one more, Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's, I think as everybody knows, I've been like a long time advocate of the trail connection scope, even back to the old days of 10 years ago. Thanks for that, Julian. But one of the things that was raised is making sure that the municipality is working, because it's exciting to get the trail connection, and as you say, for Cochrane to be the compass or the hub of all that thing, all of the activities. But one of the things we're going to have to be very deliberate about as a municipality, and as you said, to make sure that we've resourced it correctly, is if we are bringing 1 million people to our trail system a year, that not only benefits, our residents, myself that wants to hop on the trail and ride to Calgary, but we also need to make sure that we're planning how do we integrate that 1 million people use, where do they land, how do we direct them through our community, how do we minimize any negative impact on our community. So there are some really thoughtful conversations that need to happen on the municipality side and on Cochrane's side about what, the positive and potentially negative impacts of this that we need to mitigate. Overall, I see this as an amazing opportunity that we need to make happen, but we need to be very deliberate in addressing any of those, it's always the unforeseen consequences that can sometimes bite you. So we need to make sure, as you said, that we're resourcing it correctly on our end to manage that and make sure that this is something that our residents are proud to be a part of or excited to have happen, and that we're making sure that it's increasing the quality of life for our community and not being a negative factor. And so it's a conversation we do need to have, and I thank you for part of bringing that up. But as a longtime trail advocate, I'm excited that you guys have brought us to this point where we might actually have, some things to mitigate. So thank you.
Thank you. It'd be just awesome if we could parachute everybody into the meetings, especially the owners' council and the implementation team. Is those conversations are happening? Is how do you manage it, and how do you manage it well? And so we have good people, including Parks Alberta, who does this, who has Fish Creek Park in Calgary, and they deal with the millions of users. And so we have that expertise at the table, and they're talking about certain situations, and here's how it's being managed. So we're happy to have them. Can't say enough about the jurisdictional partners. It's been amazing. They come to the table prepared to go. Even the city of Calgary, they've had their representative here, top administrator, at every meeting on time and engaged, which we wanted but didn't fully expect, but they're there. And I would say this to each of you: if any of you have any questions, we will make time to meet with you, one-on-one, one-on-two, and just answer any questions that may come up. Because in 15 minutes or maybe 18 minutes now, we can't get all the details to you, but feel free to get hold of us. We'll make it a high priority to make sure we get together with you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for the presentation. This is something that I feel blessed to even be a part of, just a project, the scope of which Cochrane's never seen, obviously, and it's all very exciting. I look forward to the golden ticket presentation upcoming. And on behalf of all of council, thank you for being here with us tonight. Thanks, Alex. That concludes Delegations 4B. If I'm understanding my agenda in front of me, that leads us to our in-camera items. Is there wisdom to take a break before heading in camera? Oh, I did miss one. I'm glad you asked. Thank you. Is there wisdom in a break first, or should we proceed through with 5F? Break first? Okay. Let's do a 9-minute break to 7:25 right now, if the table agrees, and we'll re-adjourn. Reconvening the meeting. Before we advance to agenda item 5F, Councillor Federico had a comment.
Yeah, just due to ongoing situations in the background and being asked to recuse again from the mayor, I've decided to remove myself from the rest of the meeting. It's just hard to concentrate when I have other stuff going on, and I believe that being asked to recuse again for an ongoing situation where I have no information, I have been given no information really about, is once again against the MGA for asking me to recuse from a situation that eliminates my councillor abilities to vote and understand the information that I could carry on. So I will be stepping out of this meeting and I will deal with it from a public side, because I think that after the 5th recusal, this is a little much. So, good night.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Federico. We'll give you a moment to exit, and it looks like we have one more item on the public agenda here, item 5F. Our Municipal Development Plan Project Update. Could I call Mr. Mark Spence, Senior Planner, and Rachel Dillon, O2 Planning and Design, to the podium to begin their presentation, please.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor and Council. I feel honored and privileged to be serving as the project manager for the MDP. It's going to be a very important project, which is no doubt shape the future of Cochrane. Very early on, when we started looking at the MDP and we looked at the project charter, we made the commitment to inform Council and CPC of project progress and to receive feedback and guidance. And so that's why we're here tonight. This is an item for Council's information. So going back to November, we started the search for a lead consultant because just taking on this mammoth task of an MDP required the help of some professionals. So our major focus for looking for a consultant was someone who excelled with public engagement. We did a pre-qualification round because we knew that this is going to be a project of great prestige. And I think we got over 17 respondents. We narrowed that down to 4 firms and asked for RFPs. Of those 4, we did 3 interviews, and out of all that, we found that O2 Planning and Design was by far and away the most qualified, and they're also located in Calgary, which was good for us because we want to hire local. The work that has been done so far, I would describe as very collaborative. O2 is currently working with some of our directors and managers to ensure that they're represented in the upcoming surveys and public engagement, and they're also working very closely with our communications team on engagement materials. Without further delay, I'd like to now introduce Rachel Dillon, who is the project lead for O2. Rachel will give a brief overview of the project timelines and present the proposed public engagement and communication strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you all. It's such a privilege and honor to be a part of this project and to have your time here tonight. Like we always like to think at O2 that rather than being a client and a consultant, we're one team working together on this project, and it really is a fantastic project to work through with the town of Cochrane. And it's also wonderful to follow the 2 previous presentations and to hear firsthand all the passion around community building and investment in Cochrane. So in my brief presentation, I'll just hit on a few quick topics. I'll provide a bit more of an introduction, and then we'll go through the project schedule, and then spend the bulk of the time on the engagement and communications. So like Mark mentioned, my name is Rachel Dillon, and I'm a senior planner and associate at O2. And O2 is a multidisciplinary firm that integrates engagement with landscape architecture, planning, and urban design all in one. However, we do have support from other sub-consultants, Verb Media with communication support, Associated Engineering for transportation servicing and waste advice, and FBM for economic and housing support. So before I go into the schedule, as we all know, a municipal development plan is a strategic document to outline a municipality's vision, goals, and policies to guide growth, land use, infrastructure, and community development. Creating a new municipal development plan requires multiple rounds of public engagement to hear from the people of Cochrane, their challenges, and identify opportunities, and then later on in the project to refine the direction to really ensure it responds to community needs. It also needs research to understand the current state of the town to inform policy solutions. This includes the recent work on the growth study, as well as other research that will be undertaken throughout the course of the project. And like I mentioned, working in close collaboration across town departments and with the consulting team to ensure that the plan supports the town as a whole. And municipal development plans are comprehensive plans with multiple different subject areas addressed and interwoven to create a vision for the town moving forward. So the overall schedule, we're right at the beginning, and we've been really focused, like Mark mentioned, on meeting with different people from the town and discussing the MDP and how we can ensure we have regular engagement with multiple departments throughout the course of the project. We've also been starting to undertake the background research as well. We'll have the public launch for the project in September, and then from there we'll have initial ideas and insight from the public that we'll use to start to craft policy direction. Then that policy direction will be presented to the public for feedback to let us know what we got right, what is missing, what needs to be corrected, and from there we'll be able to take that feedback and formulate it into a singular draft plan. We'll present the plan to the public, and that will inform any final tweaks and revisions before we finalize it and take it through the approval process. So the project's launch in September is very strategic. Though not everyone takes summer holidays, a lot of people do, and it's nice to catch people when they return from their summer vacation. It's also when school's back in session, and we can connect with the schools and the students as they return. And it's an opportunity to take advantage of fall engagement opportunities, and usually the weather is still nice enough in September to have a few outdoor engagement opportunities as well as indoor ones. So for the engagement, we've been very fortunate enough to work in close collaboration with the planning department and the communications group as well to get their advice on engagement and what works well for the town of Cochrane. So overall, the engagement philosophy is to create welcoming spaces for a range of people so that people find the engagement tactic that works best and is most comfortable for them. We want to make it as easy as possible to participate and access information and provide opportunities to share ideas and concerns openly. Transparency is very important. The information needs to be clear about the process, how decisions are made, and report on what was heard. We want a really clear line of sight between the direction and where it came from. Of course, it also has to be adaptive, flexible to respond and adapt to the changing needs of participants over the course of the project, as well as respectful. So like I mentioned, the first phase will start in September, and it's really focused on envisioning Cochrane's future. And this engagement will focus on questions to gather ideas and values to inform the development of a 25-year and a 50-year vision. In addition to that, there will be topic-specific input to guide the development of principles, priorities, and direction, as well as the opportunity to identify challenges and opportunities. Then that will all be a great basis to start to develop and generate policy direction, which we'll then present for public feedback in early 2024, where we'll confirm the vision, priorities, and principles, and then refine that direction. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the third phase is to review the plan in its entirety and provide any final comments. So 25-year and 50-year visions. It's wonderful to have two timelines of visions, though it can be difficult for people to conceptualize the difference between the two. So how we can help formulate that in the engagement is by crafting the questions very thoughtfully. The first is asking, what is your long-term vision for Cochrane? considering the town that you would like to leave for the next generation. And then this information will feed into the 50-year vision. What is the ultimate ambition and aspiration for the town? Then to reach the 25-year vision, it's the intermediate step to get to that 50-year vision. So what steps need to be taken? How will we know we're on track to hit that 50-year time frame? So specifically for the September engagement, we're going to have a range of in-person opportunities. There will be community conversations at the Ranche House, plus other high-traffic locations. We'll let people know where we are, but we also want an opportunity to catch people as they're going about their business and checking out the Spray Lake Center, for example, or the farmers market, so we can broaden the reach of the conversation. We'll also target interviews with representatives from local organizations, community groups, and the development community. And we'll create community toolkits, which is an engagement package that we can offer to community associations and organizations to host discussions, gather feedback, and return back to us. In addition to that, we'd like to take advantage of place-based opportunities as well. Sounding boards are a great opportunity. We have a picture here from a project we did in Canmore of our sounding board. And you place it outdoors in opportunities that are in places that have a natural traffic. They could be pathways, trailheads, or anywhere people gather outdoors. And it provides the opportunity for quick feedback. And we have an indoor version of it. This is a project we did in Lloydminster, where we have a lobby display with a panel and then the same opportunity to provide quick feedback as well. And for people who are uncomfortable with online surveys, there'll also be a paper survey option available at specific locations. And lastly, online opportunities. Again, there's 3 different potential opportunities for people to provide feedback online. The first is quick polls. A lot of people are very busy. They don't have a lot of time necessarily, but if there is an opportunity to answer a question quickly in less than a minute and provide their insight, these polls will allow them to do so. And the Let's Talk Cochrane platform is a wonderful opportunity with a range of plugins that can allow us to do that. The online survey is for those who have a bit more time, 10 to 15 minutes, to provide in-depth feedback across a range of subject areas. And then an online interactive map will allow people to drop pins on specific locations and provide comments there. And we'll have questions organized by the strategic plan theme, because as we all know, official plans and municipal development plans are broad in nature. They cover a range of topics. And we have a wonderful framework to build off of that's been established in the strategic plan. So there'll be questions with the vision and values, identity related to community character and urban design, open space and natural areas with focus on the environment, livability, housing, community services and safety, parks and recreation falling under there, vibrant economy to support economic development, and connectivity for transportation and servicing. And lastly, I'll touch a little bit on communications, and again, thanks the communications team for their wonderful advice. So there's 4 main buckets here. There'll be the central hub, which will be the Let's Talk Cochrane webpage, but of course, presence on cochrane.ca to direct to that. And this will be the central repository for background information, the video describing the plan process, and any plan drafts as they emerge. There'll also be direct communications through people volunteering their email addresses if they want to, and they can be kept up to date on project progress, as well as targeted emails to community groups and organizations to distribute the word about the project amongst their networks. Additionally, we'll have a media release and ads with print, radio, and social media, as well as signs, bold signs at key locations, and posters and flyers. And once we have that engagement, we'll do a What We Heard report and update you on what we have heard from the public and where the main themes and ideas are coming from. But we'll also evaluate the engagement and communications tactics and identify what worked well or what didn't work as well, and we can recalibrate for the 2nd and 3rd phase. It'll also be the starting point to start to craft policy direction, and that will, like I mentioned, be presented during the 2nd phase at the beginning of 2024. And before we conclude, I'll just hand you back to Mark.
Thanks, Rachel. We're both here to answer any questions, and we look forward and we're eager to hear your feedback.
Okay, thank you, Mark and Rachel. It looks like we've generated a few questions. On to Councillor Nagel, please.
I'm very excited to see this on our agenda here today. I dare say this might be my highest priority item to planning for a future through the municipal development plan. So I have a lot of questions. So at what point does council provide feedback in the direction, or provide direction on where we're going with this?
Through the chair, I'd say starting tonight.
Okay. I mean, like, at what point does council provide really involved feedback in the future of what Cochrane should look like and the surrounding region?
Okay.
Not just in the process.
Let me go back to, I think it was, so we have an overall schedule, and where you see the public phase engagements, what we're going to get from O2 after they do the wholesome engagement is we're going to get back the what we heard reports, and then we could take that, and I would think that these are good touch points to come back to council and to CPC. And by the way, CPC is our advisory committee, and these would be good touch points to come back to council. We'll have a good idea of where the direction from public is kind of formulating, and I think those are probably good areas to go from there.
So you're saying October 2023, February 2024, the council would provide direction?
Yeah.
Councillor Nagel, may I interject for a moment if I can?
Yep.
I believe you are, correct me if I'm wrong, looking when council's opportunity to provide input immediately, and I'm assuming you're looking, saying yes, there'd be public engagement, but you're questioning when is council's engagement directly with council. So is that considered in the project plan? Is that correct?
That's one of my many questions, yes.
Okay.
10 touch points with council, and we could work with administration on the best format for that, but absolutely we want to hear council's input throughout, particularly as we're starting to craft policy direction and also refine the municipal development plan. I'd say like the ideal first place to start with Mark would be after the first phase of the public engagement, so we could tell you what we are hearing from the community and use that as a jumping off point for more detailed feedback.
And so that's my second question. I recognize that quite often municipal governments then take on large projects, that the approach is to kind of cast a wide net for public opinion and start with basically a blank slate. Is that what we're doing? Where it's just cast a huge net, collect ideas, and then start from there?
Yeah, so this is a new plan, so it will be exactly that. Let's cast a wide net, let's hear from as many people as possible in the community and see what they say, and then from there, we'll be able to understand more fulsomely the priorities, challenges, and opportunities. Yeah.
Okay, and I totally understand how we've arrived at that as the course of action. I have a question for administration, though. Is there another way to do this? I personally, I feel that our administration, our council members, we've been doing like 10 plus years of community engagement. I mean, Mayor Janung's lived here, I think, since the day you were born. So you spent your entire life doing community engagement. I think I would really like us, it's more of a personal governance and leadership style preference. I would rather go to the community with a couple of options and ideas and visions that are inspired by council and administration and say, here's what we think, what do you think about this? Here's what we think, what do you think about this? As opposed to just throwing out, what do you want for the future of Cochrane? Because I have big concerns about, I guess I would almost call it like leadership and governance through public opinion polling, just pulling people off the streets and like, hey, random stranger, what do you think about this life-altering policy? Is there a different way to do this with a bit more hands-on approach, a bit more directed?
Yeah, so through the chair, happy to add a few thoughts and then for them to be supplemented by the team as well. I think this is a really important point, Councillor Nagel, that I think there's a place for what you described, which is the wide net where we want to kind of get a pulse check of the community. But I think that it can't be the only thing that informs the process or the plan. I appreciate you acknowledging the expertise of staff as well and people that are working in the systems and building them and know and understand them in a way that members of the public just wouldn't be expected to know and understand them. And I think similar for those of you who have sat around this table have a unique perspective as part of it. You'll perhaps recall as well from the presentation, that there's an identification of certain stakeholders and community groups, and so that will be directly contacted to say, what's your perspective? I don't know that list has been fully developed yet, but groups like we just saw tonight, the Great Trails, or the Rotary Club, the library, other active members of our community, to try and gain those input pieces. And that not all of those input pieces are necessarily quote unquote equal. They're parts of the puzzle, they're part of informing it. And so I think it's a combination of those things. And I also think that casting a wide net, I don't know, I would just say it as, here's a completely blank slate, tell us what you think. I think we must and will prompt those conversations with some guidance and direction of minimal statements around, we need to know what you think about this element of our community, that will give some context to what people are saying, rather than just say simply, tell us anything and everything that you might think about our community. But I'd be happy to be corrected on that if that's inaccurate. Did that help with some context to that?
Yeah, it does help with some context. Being somebody who's on a 4-year term here, I have some concerns about the timeline, because if we wait until 2024 for council to provide feedback with what has been drafted as a response to public opinion, if we want to make any material changes to that, I just don't see any way this council could possibly vote on an MDP that was largely different from whatever these fine folks put forward to us from public opinion. And my main point is that we have had these 2 big strategic planning sessions with this whole group, and at these strategic planning sessions, there have been extensive notes taken, and I think I'm accurate in saying that most of the senior leaders and council members that were at those meetings unanimously agreed on some core principles, and those are the founding points that I want this plan to start with, as opposed to, because we've already had all these discussions, and I want those all to be fully encompassed at the very beginning of this conversation, and then hand it off to these.
Absolutely, and I don't know, Mark, if you can switch to the slide that encompasses the elements of the strategic plan. I think you can begin to see how that's already informing the process, because we absolutely agree and believe that there is some of that broader visioning work has been tackled in terms of what we think needs to be discussed to keep our community growing in the way that we hope to see it grow. So it's not a start from scratch and throw out everything we've done before. It's a building process. And I think that there is an element, again, in these processes, 2 things. I appreciate the timeline piece being a challenge when you think about it in terms of a council term being 4 years and this process taking nearly 2 of those 4 years to accomplish. But when we broaden that out to be remind ourselves that the MDP is a document that's going to guide the next 25 plus years of the process. I think we want to just make sure that we also do that process appropriate justice, both externally and internally, as in I think there's going to be lots of work to do even as we build this through these internal conversations, council, administration, informed by the public as part of that. And I was pleased to hear it articulated as simply as to say there's going to be at minimum 10 different direct touch points for council to get their fingers on this and to ensure that it is guided with those pieces that council has talked about and built into our process already. But there's no, I hope that don't want to be trite with it, but there's no I don't think there's really any shortcuts to that process if we want to kind of I think build the most effective document we possibly can. But again, I'd be pleased to have the team add to that if they would like to.
Thank you for that, and your point's well taken. And I think it is really important to acknowledge the wealth of experience both around the table here and in the town. I think there's a way to do both. Like you were mentioning there, the engagement with the public will be structured rather than just in big open-ended question, and it'll be focused on the different areas guided by the strategic plan. So given the volume of work done for the strategic plan and its very clear direction for the future, we're using that as a starting point to craft the questions. And then for the second piece about giving the public something to respond to as being an effective way to see what lands, that will be the second phase of engagement, with the first phase focused on gathering ideas, how people currently use the town, what do they feel is missing. It's like a public research aspect as well as a visioning aspect. Then we're able to craft direction, and we'll meet with you to get your ideas on that. And then in the second phase, we'll go back to the community and get the responses.
If I could also add just one other piece that I think may be partly at the heart of the question as well is the important work of moving those priorities forward doesn't necessarily stop, as well as an administration will continually be working on projects, programs that will move these strategic objectives forward. So it's not a pause everything while this happens. It's kind of a parallel process that's happening as well. So this is obviously a significant process which takes up some organizational bandwidth. I want to be clear about that, but there'll be many of the things that we'd like to see happen as part of this that will be going on as we go through this over the next 2 years. And so I still think we can accomplish a lot of important pieces of that while also building that plan for what comes in the future.
Okay, and then my closing comment is just to kind of summarize my thoughts and concerns on the issue. It's just I feel that this group is largely beating on the same drum on some very specific things that would change the direction of Cochrane's future. And this document, the MDP, I feel, and I believe I'm correct, and understand this is the single most important piece of policy to address those points. And I just want to make sure that the pieces that Cochrane's council and administration would see differentiate Cochrane for the better are actually making it into this MDP. And I don't want the MDP to come out as just, it could be any community's MDP. It's just a bunch, you know, it's just a carbon copy of every other community around Calgary. I don't want that. I think none of us here want that. That's all.
I think, Councillor Nagel, if you're looking for a job as MDP hype man, then you've definitely got it. That is absolutely the same internal conversation that we've had before. Is we don't like. I don't even like to. And with the Plug Your Ears planning team here, I don't like to use the language of MDP because I think that has a connotation of being a kind of dusty document that gets stuck up on the shelf. And there's some great examples of communities that have done a good job of activating their MDP and making an important part of what they do. But we absolutely believe that this becomes the bedrock of the future of Cochrane, and we want to get that right. So we're, I think, aligned in that for sure.
Councillor Nagel, please continue.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this one point that has been core to all these conversations that I'm alluding to, and that is this concept of a density gradient of, rather than Cochrane being like many other bedroom communities where it's the same thing plopped out all over the place, where it's like a gas station and like a crowfoot and then houses, and then gas station and another crowfoot and houses. Rather than doing that, if we could design a community that has a clear higher density community that almost feels like Inglewood or Kensington in the middle, and then it spreads out to lower density that feels more like Harmony on the outskirts. That to me is my single biggest priority that I want to see baked into this thing. And I will probably share it with you again. Density gradient is the term, but yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nagel. On to Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Actually, Morgan's two first points are quite similar to my own. One was, I believe the strategic plan should be driving this whole municipal development plan. And so I believe, like Morgan, that it should, I mean, it depends on how you're going to ask those questions, but I think it needs to be structured such that they actually have something people can react to, as opposed to, again, I mean, not so far as a blank slate, but I think they need something. And I think we've done the heavy lifting, and I think that should be presented to the public in those formative questions. And so I agree with Morgan on that. The second thing I agree with Morgan, although he didn't say it directly, is I think the timelines in this are too long. I think it's appropriate to have public engagement, but I just think pushing this to that date of December 2024, if I understand it correctly, I just think it's too long, but that's just my personal opinion. I have no expertise in this area. And I guess the last question or comment that I would say is, how can we be assured that the measures of whatever measures you're using in terms of public engagement are actually representative of the public? You know, what this council has struggled with is you go to particular people who happen to be available, or as Morgan says, the first person on the street, but they may not necessarily represent the views of our general population. And so I think every public engagement exercise that I've read about or heard about has struggled with getting a representative sample size in terms of being able to have appropriate feedback from the public. But yeah, so my three comments are, I think it needs to be structured in terms of those questions, not leading, but indicating exactly what we've talked about and the heavy work we've done. I think the timelines may be too long, in my humble opinion, and in terms of public engagement. I do like the postmortem phase of the first one, so you can tweak it for the phases 2 and 3. And I'm curious to see, how do you actually get a representative sample size in terms of public engagement?
Thank you for that. And absolutely for your first point with the strategic plan, and I completely agree, and we agree as a team that that'll form the structure for the engagement and the launching point for the municipal development plan. So each of the questions will be linked to a specific facet of the strategic plan: identity, open space and natural areas, livability and vibrant economy, and connectivity. So that good thinking is carried through. So it's not a blank slate, but it is an opportunity to reach a broad cross-section of people with targeted questions to each of those strategic areas. So with regards to the timeline, typically what takes the municipal development plan timeline, usually a year, is because we want to go back to the community to show them how their feedback was integrated, and then give a final check-in while the plan is as a whole, before it goes through the approval process, and then to work through collaboratively with the town and make sure that everything is really thoroughly reviewed, and check in with yourselves and the planning commission. When you start to schedule things, that's as the timeline builds out from there. So generally they do typically take a year and a half to create, but we could absolutely look for efficiencies where we can find them. And then your question about the representative sample is an excellent one, and you're exactly right. It is something that communities across the country struggle with, and it's particularly because, as we all know, people live incredibly busy lives, and a long-term plan is often not necessarily their top priority as they're meeting their immediate day-to-day needs. And how we tackle that is by having a range of engagement opportunities and ensuring that there's ones that people can provide their feedback very quickly, whether it's a quick poll online that they could do in less than a minute, or they could happen upon a sounding board and provide a quick comment there. Now, to ensure we have a representative sample, that's a little trickier because people self-select to participate. Right. We don't make certain proportions from certain demographics participate. But what we'll do is we'll ask a few key demographic questions that are optional. Age, where in the community they live in, how long they've lived in Cochrane, and we'll cross-reference that with Statistics Canada to see how well we have reached the community. And as part of that postmortem for phase 1, we could cross-reference it and see if there's any groups that we haven't quite hit, and then we could recalibrate for the second phase.
Okay, great, thank you. I appreciate that answer.
Councillor McFadden, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I think maybe what you're hearing today is just reflective of how intensely this council values good planning and what high expectations we have. And I mean, my first introduction to local government was actually as a volunteer on the 2007 MDP. And so it's really exciting for me to be at the next iteration of that. And often when I think, and as it was referred to, is, MDPs can be, dusty pieces of paper that sit in a bookshelf and never get activated. But in Cochrane, because we're such a desirable place to live, it's like doing SimCity for real, right? And so this MDP is something that, as long as we make sure that we're then tying it up with the land use bylaw, is going to be activated and can make a difference. And so that's, and as Councillor Nagel said, I mean, establishing a new MDP is one of the most important decisions a council, can make, because that's going to frame, planning for the next 25 years, or certainly until the next iteration or update in a 5-year schedule. So, and the fact is, Cochrane is one of the most desirable places to live in the country, one of the fastest growing municipalities in the country for probably close to 2 decades now. And so it's so super important, and I'm really fortunate to be working with a group of staff members and council colleagues that really want to make sure that we're taking planning to the next level and setting a high bar. And so I think that's what we're asking for. And so we recently did the tour of the University District and saw some of those best-in-class solutions for how things could be done. And that's what I would like to see out of this MDP, is like, how can we be proving up, leading edge solutions, best in class, and setting a really high bar for our development community. And then what I think, and so my assumptions in your presentation, of course, was that the 4 stakeholder groups were going to be council, our in-house experts, yourself as our genius consultants, and then of course our public. And so what I got from your presentation, being focused on the public engagement, was not that the public engagement was more important, but that this council has made a deliberate point saying we want to stress public engagement as healthy decision making. So that's how I took your presentation. So all that to say then is I want to just understand then how the public engagement is going to fit into it. I'm looking at the IAP2 spectrum. I'm not sure if you're building that into how you're making your decision making, but are we looking that when working with the public, is this going to be at what level? Is it like going to be inform, consult, involve, collaborate, or empower? Are you mapping that out in your decision making or plan?
Thank you. Well, and also thank you for bringing up IAP2. Absolutely. So several members of the team, myself included, are IAP2 certified. And for this project, it's typically in the consult range, where we will go to the community, hear their concerns, their ideas, and for the future. And like you picked up on at the beginning of the presentation, a plan isn't informed by community engagement alone. It is involving collaboration with the town and then the best research that we have available at the time as well to make those informed decisions.
Okay, yeah, and then one of those, the promise to the public then in that piece, and sometimes I think this is where we do fall down when we're saying we're doing community engagement, is that the understanding, the expectation of what that is differs. Okay? And so if we're saying that the commitment is consult, by the IAP2, that is to keep the public informed, to listen to and acknowledge their concern and aspirations, and provide feedback on how the public input is going to influence the decision, which I think is the right lens, because it doesn't intrude on council's level of being the final decision maker and bringing that lens of experience and expertise and the visions that we've got there. So I just wanted to be clear that we're coming at it from a consult lens, and that we're also going to communicate that to the public, so there's not any misalignment of expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll ensure that we make that clear in our engagement and communications material, the level of involvement and how the feedback will be used. And as you all know very well, a community as diverse as Cochrane has a equally diverse set of opinions as well. So it is very important that that consult is the level of engagement, so we could take it all in and then reflect on it and then use the other information and expertise we have on hand to craft the plan and the policy direction.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate the commitment to the 10 touch points with council. There were also some things in your presentation I really appreciated. Commitments to connect with the community association and the toolkits for that. I love the idea of connecting with the schools. That's really great. Referring to Alex's point of how do we work to get some sort of statistical balance. The commitment to the IAP2 and your various different engagement pieces, and that willing to adapt and to evolve with what's working. So yeah, so I appreciate all of that. My expectation is that we roll out of this Cochrane having delivered a high-end MDP that other communities look to and aspire. And that then allows us to set the bar for our developers so that all the next level decisions create an even greater community. In referencing Councillor Nagel's point that we really want to talk about density gradient, I think there's something to that, and I think council's had a lot of conversations about that, but I think I would suggest to administration that perhaps we have a committee of the whole session or some sort of a learning session so that council kind of sit down and map out what the implications and benefits of that might be and what the opportunities might be. Because I think while on this, we've kind of talked about it a number of times, I don't think we've ever kind of sat down and kind of mapped out the implications of that and where we might be limited. So that would just be my perhaps ask of administration or of the process, that council be given a chance to work through that. And that's my comments, questions for now. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. On to Mayor Janung.
Yeah, thank you. Not much to add. I like the process as you've laid it out to us this evening, I guess. Picking up on what Councillor Nagel was talking about on touch points with council, I think if we could go back to your timeline, if I'm reading that correct, and I think I agree with the process here, if I'm understanding it. So first phase is to go out and do some, or public engagement is in September, and then we see it in October?
Okay. Exactly.
So go out, get public engagement on on kind of a wide topic of things, but based on strategic plan initiatives. That was the previous slide that was up. So then come back to council in October of this year. So what I heard Councillor Nagel was saying was 2024 would be our first touch point, but it's actually the fall of this year.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just
right
wanted
after
to
the
clarify
public
that.
engagement.
And then another one in 2024 in January-ish or February. Yeah, okay. The only other thing I would add, I agree with a lot of actually everything that's been said around the table tonight, especially around the sample size and accurate cross-section and making sure we're getting the right people's feedback. I mean, that's the wrong way of saying it, but the correct, I guess, an accurate cross-section of our community. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. Councillor Nagel was also talking about some of the things that he's passionate about seeing in the plan. I think if you reference, and you probably already are, but our community vision document, and that kind of helped build the foundation of our strategic plan, our latest strategic plan. Anyway, I think that was a very good document that kind of had some good material in there, and I thought we did a good job as a group visually representing to the community what it is that we wanted to see in our community long term. And I think the visual stuff in there was very helpful in kind of connecting with community members around less about the jargon and more about the, you know, the visual aspect. So I'll leave that there, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a MDP that is going to set the bar at such a high level that we're going to be like, wow, geez, where'd the bar go? So, thank you.
Me too. That sounds great. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor Janung. Councillor Nagel, you had your quandary settled?
Bring it back in the fall.
Okay, okay.
Density gradient? No, okay, all right. I got a bite. Yes, the density gradient is one of my major priorities, but the density gradient conversation is a piece of a larger conversation that, like, I think there are a number of really specific policies and ideas that I think council would unanimously endorse if we were actually asked to put our hands up or down for a vote. But I feel that council has not been given the opportunity to ever make those decisions. And many of these really big picture discussions, there's density gradient, there's also protecting core green spaces, maybe the idea of wildlife corridors, there's all sorts of conversations that are really big. And in my long tenure as a councillor, every time we have hit these policies, it's always like, wow, gonna have to amend the MDP if you want to change something that big. Well, now's the time, all right? Like, we got 10 years of ideas to put into this MDP, and I want to make sure we have the opportunity to do it, because I'm really under the impression this will be our only opportunity to have these big conversations. So I rest my case.
Yeah, it absolutely is the opportunity to have this, for sure.
Don't miss that meeting.
Well, Ms. Dillon, you came looking for feedback, and I'd say we got it. That was a robust conversation. I've got one final question that popped into my mind, and that's, as we're trying to sell this to the public, it sounds silly, but really, do you have an elevator sales pitch to sell to why an averagely engaged resident would care about the MDP? And that's something that I struggle with, of having to sell why anybody would care about this document. What are your thoughts?
That is an excellent question, and I wish I had pre-prepared an elevator pitch. We're currently working through the engagement communications material as we speak, but really, like I was mentioning before, with people concerned with their day-to-day, it's hard to shift focus to envisioning the future. So it really is an opportunity to use as our hook, what do they love about Cochrane today? What do they view and think about as they're moving about their community today? And then use that as a launching point to contemplate its future. And we could really all come together and start to really dream big about what the town can be in the future and what we need to continue on.
If I may add to that, I think that was great. This was partly what I was saying before, is I actually don't think we should be asking people about the MDP. We should be asking people about the community, the future, what they love about it. And as soon as you say, I'd like to talk to you about the municipal development plan, I think you're gonna get the average person to be like, I am not interested in talking about that. But most people are interested in talking about why they moved to Cochrane, what they love about it, what their concerns are for its future, those types of things. And so when you shrink it down to talking about people's communities, their neighborhoods, where their kids play and go to school and those types of things. I think that's where you're gonna get the buy-in from the people. The MDP is actually the tool in the background that helps us achieve those objectives, but we wanna talk to people about the feel, the vision, all the things that we've talked about as part of it. And so I think that is, MDP is a tough sell to even, for, municipal, lifers as a topic of conversation. And so I think you've really got to get down into the concepts of what the plan is meant to, activate and help us achieve.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Derricott. Thank you, Ms. Dillon and Mr. Spence. We appreciate the presentation on behalf of all of council. Thank you for coming to see us today, and we look forward to our next council engagement moment. It sounds like there's a lot of opinions around the table, and we hope this can be a great success. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That brings us to the end of our public portion of this meeting, if I'm not mistaken, with all the changes. And I would now ask for a motion to go in camera. Councillor Flowers, all those in favor? That concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.